Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's podcast, the Concealed Carry Podcast, of course. Thrilled to be here. It's me and Grandpa Graybeard.
Just happy everybody's here. Hopefully, we get a good group of people in here, and everybody's staying safe.
Yeah,
All the stuff that's going on. So
for sure, for sure. Question for you, bro.
yeah, man.
Do you use that? Do you have one of those webcams where in the settings it has an option for like smoothing so that it makes your skin look smoother?
I don't think so. I'm using the normal.
Because the other day I saw a picture posted by your wife on Facebook,
Right.
and I'm like, who is that man?
Yeah, I have a camera that makes me look a lot better for the podcast.
Maybe it's the lighting.
I don't know.
Or maybe it's just the lighting in that shot. Maybe, I don't know. I don't mean to give you such a hard time.
No, it wasn't flattering lighting, but you know.
Okay, so today's a Justified Save story or episode. We have stories. I actually don't have that many Justified Save stories. Matthew, you failed. I'm sure they're out there. You just didn't find them, bro.
I didn't find them. The other ones were so intriguing that I thought, I could tell you, we could tell you about 6 more stories about home invasions and that, but we got some really interesting ones. So
yep. Yeah, and I don't know if people realize this either, but as far as about the podcast, about how stuff comes together, but there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of noise, frankly, it has to be filtered through. Matthew does a great job, and a big it's a big job for him to comb through a bunch of stories that that's kind of the first filter, and he's got to filter through a lot of stuff because there's stories that come across our desk, and there's things that sometimes people send me, even they're like, hey, you guys should talk about this, and then I read the story, and there's reasons why we don't talk about everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some of the stories are just not really good on facts.
Yeah, so. That's so true. We get a lot that are like, dude broke into house, homeowner shot dude, end of story. It's like, okay, cool, awesome. Like, make note of it that it happened, right? But there's just not anything to talk about there. So, like this comment. Yes, Matt. Very tired of shipping delays. I'm catching up past episodes. Have you heard a class coming to Frankfort, Indiana? If so, is it still happening? Oh, heard you had a class. That's one that you're involved in teaching, aren't you, Matthew?
Yeah, I think Rob Beckman's also going to go out there and teach as well. So
yeah,
should be a good one.
Speaking of which, you guys you guys have a class this weekend?
We do, but we had one person sign up and we had to cancel it because we just had one person and can't make it work for one person. So
that's not cool.
Yeah.
Come on, people, where you at?
Yeah, and he was holding on, and I didn't want to leave him hanging in the wind. You know what I mean? I'm like, right. We'll hold on, but if we don't get anybody else, we'll probably have to cancel it. So he was understanding, but yeah, it's just hard for one person.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. So what do you guys have left this season that you're doing as far as like the Guardian pistol courses?
We have one in Columbus here in July, and then one in Indiana in August. So,
yep.
Maybe we can get that other one rescheduled.
Columbus one is July 24, 25, and 26.
Right.
And that's all 3 days. Essentials, standards, and breakthrough. And then the let's see, no.
I'm sorry, it's not August. It's September 25th, 26th, and 27th.
The Indiana one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's right. Yep. There you go. So, guys, if you're in the kind of that, Indiana, Ohio region, kind of, whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not that far. So, I mean, you have to realize, guys, like for me to drive to the range I use to film videos for our company or to teach classes is a 90+ minute drive. And then sometimes I hear from people like back east, they're like, what? I have to drive over an hour to get to this thing? And I'm like, yeah, come out west, bro. Like wide open roads, like, and a lot of nothing in between places.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people get spoiled because they have ranges in their backyard. They have so much
Sure,
property and stuff. So,
sure.
you know,
Yep. But guys, hey, support these guys. Matthew is one of our instructors. Rob Beckman, who's the host of the Firearm Trainers podcast, one of our instructors. And I know everybody's schedule has gotten totally out of whack with COVID-19 and everything, and things having to be rescheduled and moved. And I mean, we've had things canceled here in Colorado as far as classes and stuff as well. So, and there's some things I'm trying to get rescheduled as well. So, hey, check out the calendar, training calendars at class.concealedcarry.com, and we appreciate it. All right, so let's get into the recorded portion of the show today as far as the audio portion. Again, a lot of stories here to cover today. It'll be a good time. So stay with us. We've got a lot to discuss and lots to learn. You ready to do it, Matthew?
sure.
Let's go in 3, 2, 1. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, episode number 421. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network. I am your host, Riley Bowman, and I'm joined by Matthew Maruster.
Super happy to be here with you guys. And you guys held down the fort last week and did 2 episodes without me, so I was feeling a little lonely. So you let me back on the podcast. So thanks.
Yeah, you had to beg and grovel and plead for forgiveness.
Right.
So, guys, we're thrilled to be with you today. This is a Justified Saves episode. Today, we got a bunch of stories to cover, lots of lessons learned. I know we're going to enjoy it and come away, hopefully, knowing a thing or two more about what to do or what not to do, especially. So, I think this is a really important part of mindset and mental preparation is thinking through these various, real life problems and analyzing what we would do, how we would do it, how we would handle ourselves. Where's the line that we do not cross? Because that's where people get in trouble, is when they cross a line that sometimes they don't realize is there because they haven't put in the time to think and analyze and learn about the use of force, particularly the use of deadly force. Today's episode is brought to you by CCW Safe. That's my pick for currently. My self-defense coverage is all provided through CCW Safe. Fantastic people over there that run the company. They have a very mission-focused attitude about what they are trying to provide to the serious, and righteous-minded concealed carriers. So head on over to ccwsafe.com. Check out their various plans. You can get the ultimate plan, or you can get the defender plan. The protector plan, I think, is the one that's for if you are active or retired LE or military. And check out ccwsafe.com. Also, we would like to point out that we now sell on the concealedcarry.com web store the Slide Spider from Arachnid Grip. And this is for that extra little grip that you might want or need on the slide of your pistol. I think Matthew's got this mounted on one of his guns, maybe multiple of your guns. I don't know. So tell us about the Slide Spider.
Yeah, so if you guys know what like Talon grips are, grip tape. Basically, it's grip tape that is applied to your slide, but it's not just like a patch of grip tape. It's custom to that specific gun. So if there's serrations, it'll go inside the serration. So it adds grip without really adding a lot of like texture on the outside. It's kind of recessed, which is good. But it really does make a big difference, especially on those small like Glock 43, Glock 42 type size guns where you might not have a lot of slide to grab onto, and you have a stiff recoil spring, you might struggle with it a little bit. Having that little extra grip helps. So it doesn't hurt anything, right? And it only helps. So
Yeah. We got Mark here too, who has a little bit of a physical disability, and the slide spider, I'm sure, helps him, manipulate his pistol a little bit better. So that's another thing too. Or if you've got a little bit, weakness in your hands, or that grip strength is not quite what it used to be, just having a little bit more friction of something to hold on to might be the solution for some of you. I played with the slide spider on my gun. I think it is a great product and a fantastic quality product as far as what Arachnid Grip brings to the table with the slide spider. Ultimately, I did remove it from my pistol, but I'd certainly recommend it for anyone that feels that they need it. I don't need it. I got these big meat hands and stuff, and so it was just a little extra abrasiveness that I didn't feel like I needed. But that doesn't mean it's not a great product, and we are proud to be sellers of the slide spider from Arachnid Grip. So check it out, concealedcarry.com/slide spider. All right, we've got we've got a lot of opportunities in today's episode to actually probably talk about this very thing. But Matthew, you have here a note. We wanted to talk to listeners about riots and their safety. Yeah. I'd like to hear your thoughts. I'd like to hear from you first.
Yeah, like you said, we'll probably mention a lot of this, and this is on a lot of you guys, listeners and watchers' minds and stuff. But just wanted to remind you guys that we are all like thinking about you guys and gals too, and want you to be safe and protect your families. Do the right thing and don't get into situations if you can avoid it. Right? I know. We all try to be ready for everything, right? We train and we think we're pretty ready for whatever might come our way, but we don't need to go looking for it. So if you can, just protect your family, stay away from those areas, and because it's popping up in little areas that you wouldn't expect. So just take care of your family, be safe. We're thinking about you guys.
Recent events has just reinforced in my own mind and just how fast things can get out of hand for people. It's been remarkable to me to get messages from friends and people I know from various places across the country that are kind of in the thick of it, depending on where they live. Most of these riots have been, more affecting downtown areas of major cities. But, there's been a few instances where things have gotten out a little, bit more from the downtown areas. And so, we got to watch for that. And actually talking about Brian Eastridge, who's host of the now former Law Dog Shooting Sports podcast. They're taking a bit of a hiatus and regrouping and probably going to come back with a little bit of a different format of a show. But Brian is a police officer in downtown Oklahoma City and lives downtown. So here's the thing. There's a lot of hate going on right now. There's on all sides, right? People that hate cops. There's racism involved. I'm not referring to specific incidents, by the way. I'm just saying that kind of stuff, it doesn't fly in my world. Okay, all that should go away. But realize that a lot of the frustration being taken out, is being taken out on businesses, being taken out on people, just regular people, being taken out on cops that have nothing to do with any of this. And some, many of these cops probably live right amongst, the same people that are, causing some of these problems. I'm not talking about the protesters. I'm talking about the rioters, people that are looking for an excuse to get out and just cause destruction and mayhem. It's inexcusable. It's wrong. It's despicable. Protest all you want. Okay, that is your right. That's your, that's guaranteed in the Constitution. Protest all you want, but destroying property and lives and hurting people. I mean, there's been numerous cops killed last week or so. There's been other people killed, rioters and protesters alike, right? I've seen some horrible, horrific video of people getting, run over, caught between vehicles. Sometimes some of that maybe brought upon themselves to some degree, but still, I mean, it's sad and it's disappointing to see. So, what I would say though, for the rest of us, those of us that are just trying to go about our lives and live day to day, don't let your guard down, because stuff can change in a right hurry. I think it was Saturday night, there was a tweet posted. I think that later came down. Well, the account was taken down for like the main, like, or one of the big Antifa Twitter accounts. And they said, forget the city. Let's take this into the residential areas, into the neighborhoods, this riot stuff. And, that's dicey. That's scary a little bit. So you got to stay switched on, stay engaged, be ready, and not let your guard down. So, and I mean, a little example, avoid situations or places where you might, where it possibly increases your risk of getting caught up in stuff. So for an instance, on Saturday, I taught a little class up at our range, and took my son with me. He wanted to get out of the house and wanted to come and assist, which he was a great help, and I was very appreciative of that. Driving home, though, as it was getting into the evening hours, we left early in the morning. It was like 6:30 in the morning. As we did go ahead and kind of pass through the downtown area along the interstate. Wasn't so concerned about things then, but on the way back, we took the long way home. Completely avoiding any of the downtown area. Didn't want to take the chance or the risk that there could be protesters that decide to try to block the interstate like they've done in some other places. So you don't want to get caught up in that stuff. Be switched on and be thinking and taking those steps you need to avoid having to be placed in a very bad situation in the first place. And that's what we're so big about here on the podcast, right? And that same lesson is going to carry on through some of the stories we're going to cover today. Is the idea of avoidance. So, if we avoid trouble in the first place, all the better.
No doubt.
So, guys, be safe out there, and let's get to our first story here. First story is kind of a bit of a sad one, really. I mean, yeah. It really is sad, because of my first thought is how do little kids, really? I mean, these are kids. How do they get mixed up in stuff like this?
Crazy.
Headline of the story is 7-year-old shot while attempting to burglarize St. Louis home with other boys. This is a 7-year-old boy. Now, he was tagging along with 2 other 12-year-old boys during an attempt to break into a home in St. Louis. And as they're so a 23-year-old man, it says here, heard banging and glass breaking from the rear of the home. He found the 3 boys coming into the home through a broken window. So that seems pretty apparent, right? Glass breaking, somebody's entering in through a broken window. Police say the man fired a shot from his weapon in the direction of the suspects, fearing for his safety. The 3 boys started to run away. One thing, but it's got kids that are right around that age, and it's just that doesn't even compute in my brain that one of my children of that age would be even capable of doing something. Now, granted, it's probably more of again, tagging along with these older kids, but still unreal. I do got to pose a question here, though, Matthew. Would you shoot a 7-year-old child?
Yeah, and this was kind of why I put this in here, because oftentimes I see people say, if anybody comes in my house, they're leaving in a body bag, right? Like, I don't have to ask questions. That door's for your protection, not mine. All the catchphrase and stuff. And we always try to cover these stories and home invasions and say, look, I mean, yes, somebody breaking into your home, it legally justified to use deadly force. It's reasonably assumed that they're there to cause you harm, right? If they're feloniously breaking into your home, but like, we also say, but use some common sense if you can, and use some discernment if you have the ability to. And I don't know. It doesn't say what time of the day or night this was. It doesn't say distances, and it really doesn't go into any statement from him where I saw them from this far away, or I gave them commands or anything. But I think when you look at a story like this, it's hard to say that you would see, I don't know what the 12-year, they could, I look like a 12-year-old probably in height, right? Like I'm not very tall, but a 7-year-old, it's just hard to imagine that you would mistake that as that person as a threat. I don't know. I'm not second guessing saying he did anything wrong. I'm just saying it's hard if you identified your threat and said, this is a threat that needs to be shot rather than this is just something breaking into my home. And again, I'm not saying that, he did anything wrong. I'm just saying if you had the opportunity to take that shot back, knowing that it was a 7-year-old kid, and who knows, maybe they were there to kill the guy. I don't know. But we often say like, well, somebody who is drunk broke into the wrong house, right? They're drunk, they break into the wrong house, and somebody shoots them, and they're like, well, stupid games get stupid prizes, and we kind of like, cast it off. But like, it's really no different than if you have the ability and discernment and the time available to definitely make sure that what you're shooting at is not your neighbor, your drunk neighbor who thinks it's his apartment and not yours, and or a kid, or your family member sneaking in through a window, your kid. Use that discernment, and that's all we try to get through to people. Not to say you can't use deadly force to protect yourself and your home or your family, but if you can, no one wants to shoot a 7-year-old kid.
Yeah.
I don't think so. So,
well, I mean, so it comes down to, here's how I see it. For me to feel justified, just even on a moral level, like a values, like who Riley is, who I am, I've got to perceive a threat, right? And I'm not saying a 7-year-old couldn't pose a threat.
of course,
It's just that it's very unlikely that a 7-year-old, or that I would feel threatened by a 7-year-old, short of them having a gun in their hand with finger on the trigger pointing in my direction. Maybe some sharp, pointy objects could potentially be an issue, but again, I mean, realize. I think the point I'm trying to get across here is we need to identify what we are shooting at, right? And by identifying, does that change things for us? And it absolutely can and should, right? And so we don't know exactly, for whatever reason, the article says nothing about what time of day this happened at. But if it was dark, then when a lot of things happen, but even if it's not dark, still, we need to identify what it is that we are drawing our gun on and pointing at, and then ultimately maybe shooting at. And that changes the dynamic situation for sure. And it is, I think, our obligation before using deadly force to know what we are shooting at, right? If people have a problem with hunters shooting at things they see moving in the bushes, right? There's so much time spent in hunters education classes about, making the point of, or talking about the importance of identifying the animal that you're about to shoot. Why shouldn't we identify a person we're about to shoot at, right? So I assure you that you have time to identify the threat. There's very few exceptions where that may not be. But if you got somebody coming through a window and you're in your home and your home, and you've got, whether it's a hallway, whether it's a doorway, whatever, you can take up a position of advantage and of some sort of cover. You have time to identify what it is and who it is coming through that door or that window. And that allows you to make a decision on whether you should pull the trigger or not. All right. Again, I don't think anything that was done here was wrong, particularly from a legal perspective. I would have a hard time with myself knowing I just shot a kid.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sorry, but breaking in's not the same thing as somebody that's coming at you with a weapon. And I know some people out there will disagree and be like, well, I didn't know what they were going to do. They were, by them breaking into my house, they assumed that liability, that I got to assume they're coming to hurt me. Well, I understand that, but still, you need to identify what it is you're pulling the trigger at. So, next, Matthew, tell us about this grocery store employee who is now in custody after shooting a man in Brooklyn.
Yeah. So this is not a crazy story. A guy pulls a knife on a deli store employee. Deli store employee perceives that person armed with a knife and as a deadly threat, draws a firearm and shoots him. Nothing too out of the ordinary. But if you read the story, the headline, it says grocery clerk or grocery store employee in custody after shooting man to death in Brooklyn. If you read the story, it's basically happens at 11:06 p.m. So in the evening time, May 25th, at a grocery store or a little deli. Basically what happens is this guy, there's no kind of contest to the grocers or the deli store employees claim that he feared for his life. Knife is found on scene. Dude had the knife. Nobody contests that, but the guy is in custody because he didn't have a registered firearm, or his firearm he didn't have his it's in New York, so he didn't have his ability, his license to possess a firearm. So he's in custody. And so I put this in there because it just kind of shows or it kind of underscores a couple of the little drawbacks of having these crazy licensing rules and things where nobody's contesting that this guy, used his firearm legally and justifiably in self-defense, but he's in custody, and that shouldn't happen. We shouldn't put victims that haven't done anything wrong in custody, right? So I think we all agree. But this is one of those things, and it reminds Riley and I mentioned this, or Riley mentioned this to me. I'm sure you guys are thinking about that the other guy in New York that he was arrested in his own home because he had his father's firearm that that he hadn't registered it yet. So pretty sad that he's in custody, but hopefully they get that worked out, and enough people see and say this is a stupid law that should never be like this, and they change it. But pretty interesting story.
I'd love to see the law changed for New York City. Love to see a Supreme Court case taken up that makes it so it's impossible for these stupid and ridiculous laws to be in place. Because it's unacceptable that people in certain parts of this country and in certain cities are so much more vulnerable than the rest of us. So.
Agreed.
Yep. All right. Next up on our ohio.concealedcarry.com site, your home state, Matthew.
Yeah, but the story actually happened in Kentucky. So maybe it's, I don't know, why registers Ohio might be just across the border.
How about that? Yeah, it might be right there. Yeah, it's true. That could be. Let's see. Boone County Sheriff's Office. I don't know where Boone County is, but we had an attempted burglary go wrong, ended up in a beat-up burglar, and several warning shots being fired at 2 different times.
Yeah, crazy story.
It really is. So, and it may be difficult for me to keep facts straight. So you got to set me straight if I get something wrong here. Basically, you have a man. He's 29 years old. He's currently in jail after an attempted burglary of a home. They were called to this home about 2 p.m., so it was in the afternoon, and because of shots being fired and a burglary in progress. When police arrived on scene, it says here they found the homeowner subduing the suspected burglar outside the home. Reports show that the suspect attempted to gain entry to the residence forcibly, but was confronted by the armed homeowner. The man, I don't bother naming these guys anymore. He ran away on foot toward the riverbank, and as he did, the homeowner reportedly fired several warning shots at him. The homeowner continued to look for the suspected burglar and found him in a wooded area. Okay, so you have a situation where homeowner's in his home, right? He's in his home. And dude tries to break in. Homeowner confronts him and is armed. Okay, fine. Dude takes off. That should be end of story right then and there. Like, that's it. Right? Cops are called, cops show up, they investigate, maybe they find the guy. And it turns out, isn't there also other suspects that were involved? I don't think we've even gotten to there yet. I know that there was an updated story here, related story. No, I don't know where this one came from. Hold on.
Yeah, that's another one that kind of ties into this one.
Gotcha.
It's not the same situation, but
Gotcha. Yeah, I read into that the wrong way, but yeah. So that's where the situation should have ended, right?
mhm.
But homeowner decides to fire warning shots, whatever that means. Maybe that's what you call them when you try to actually shoot and hit the guy, but you suck so bad at shooting you miss. I fired warning shots at him, officer, and then I pursued him because I had to keep him from getting away. And he does catch up with this guy, grabs him, and begins to fight with him. The result was a bruised and battered man who received medical. I'm skipping over his name because I just don't give a crap. In fact, I'm going to tell our managing editor of the site why we even bother naming these people. Anyway, just kidding. He was, and there's actually a photo of him from the police. He is beat up pretty good. So, homeowner caught up to him. Homeowner beat him up pretty good. That's all fine and well. The homeowner was not charged with anything, and was injured, but but apparently refused medical treatment. Okay, so be it.
Mhm.
But keep in mind, all right, the actual result of this is the homeowner is injured, as it states in the article. They didn't have to go down that road that day. They didn't have to end up in that position, and it could have ended up worse for them, right? I mean, I assume as they're chasing after this man, they've still got their gun. They fired supposed warning shots at him. So when they caught up with him and they got into a physical fight now, what if the suspect gained control of your weapon?
Mhm.
I'd say this homeowner is extremely fortunate. They're extremely fortunate that they didn't get themselves worse than just somehow, I guess relatively minorly injured. So dead. They're lucky they didn't end up dead. And they're lucky they didn't somehow get charged with something too, potentially. This had the potential of going that route. I mean, here's my point. Okay, because all right, this man committed a felony, right? And so in most states, totally fine for this homeowner to go and submit him to arrest. Okay, but we know there's a physical altercation that took place. So what that appears to amount to is a bunch of fists and stuff being thrown. And so you got this guy subdued on the ground. It says as police arrive. I imagine there were some punches thrown at this man's face as he is subdued on the ground.
Mhm.
In current conditions of society, how would that look if a police officer had a suspect subdued on the ground and he's bashing their face in? Right? So, and we have all kinds of people saying that stuff's got to change with law enforcement and with their training and all this stuff. Should we not also hold ourselves to the same standard? I think it's a fair question.
Yeah, and you bring up the law enforcement angle. I'm gonna leave it at a civilian level. I mean, didn't we just see a big incident occur when somebody tried to effect a citizen's arrest, kind of pursuing somebody, right? So it doesn't say exactly where he actually got in the fight, whether it was on his property or not. But I mean, I think the point where
It's actually irrelevant.
Right, exactly. But I think the point was that we were trying to make in the last episode when we talked about the Arbery incident. We're not going to rehash that, but this mentality, whether it doesn't have to be any sort of malicious intent as far as a racist intent or a hatred, it's a mentality that says, I'm not going to let this happen to me. I'm going to affect my judgment on this person. I'm going to deal out justice, right? And it's not. You're trying to take out revenge on this person because this person is running away. You've affected the outcome of the incident, right? You've already done that. And so it's that mentality. And luckily, thank God that this guy didn't end up in a situation where he had to shoot and kill this guy, or he ended up getting shot and killed, because it would have been unnecessary on both ends. So we really have to, like you said, hold ourselves accountable, and think about what we're doing. And when you see people online posting things like, if I'm justified, I shoot to kill, and no questions asked, you really gotta, police our own and kind of tamp that down, and educate. I'm not saying yell at these people. I'm saying educate them and tell them why that mentality is dangerous.
You got it. That's right. That's what we've preached since the beginning of this podcast, and many hundreds, or if not thousands of you, maybe tens of thousands of you, have been educated and made the better for it.
Yeah.
So good on you, and good on you for being here and listening today. I just noticed, actually, as I was going back through this, that it was multiple times that warning shots were fired. I had missed that in my first reading of the article. So that when the suspect ran away from the house, the homeowner fired several warning shots, and then when he caught up to him, when he found him down like on the riverbank or something, he fired several more warning shots, and then that I assume allowed him to then grab this man, and that's when the physical fight began. I don't know. It's an interesting mentality, like I'm going to use my gun as a warning device to gain compliance, so I then can subdue them to my custody and then pound their face in.
Yeah, it's just not
okay.
Not great. We shouldn't be doing that, right?
I agree. Third suspect charged after a deadly shooting during Morel's Inlet robbery. This was in South Carolina, where a third person had been apprehended after a deadly shooting during a recent robbery in Morel's Inlet. Never even heard of that place. So apparently you had this robbery, where two others had already been arrested, and this third man surrendered himself to authorities just a few days ago. What happened was a man was returning home from work while his home was being burglarized. Now, this is such a great story as far as the example this provides. We've come across these kind of stories in the past on the podcast. It's not the most common thing that we find in these kind of situations, but it is something I think is worthwhile for us as self-defense minded individuals to consider. And that is that, this chance that we walk in to a burglary, right, of our home, right? And so it's so easy to let our guard down once we get that garage door open and we pull in and we park and we're getting out and we're bringing groceries in, because this is our home environment. It's supposed to be our safe sanctuary. And next thing you know, you're walking into something going down in your home. This happens more frequently than you would imagine. And so the lesson here is to not let your guard down, just like we were talking about with the whole riot stuff towards the beginning of the episode. Not letting our guards down, not making assumptions that whenever we come home that everything's good. We should take in details. We should look at the property itself as we're approaching it. Are my windows intact? Are my doors intact? Are there any other signs? Is there a getaway car parked out in front? Some strange vehicle that I'm not familiar with? If so, is there somebody sitting in it? What are they doing? What are they there for? I mean, all these things, all these clues, provided that there's one or more of these things that we take note of, would be enough for us to kind of go, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? And taking note and having a little bit greater level of attention is very valuable. So what happened here is this man came home. His home was being burglarized. It says during a struggle. So that's assumed that, this guy probably walks in through the door, and next thing you know, you got dudes on top of you. It says here that the man, the homeowner, and at least one burglar were shot. The victim later died from his injuries. The man, right? The homeowner. So, again, I think we covered a story a while back. It's hard for me to keep a timeline on these things, where a couple was murdered and they came home into their home. I know personally, and this is not one that we report on the podcast, but I had a concealed carry class student that came through my class a few years back who her husband didn't need the class. and she requested if he could attend with her because this was a very unsettling thing for her. But she had come home during a lunch break one day and was violently assaulted and tied up in her home. This happened just 10, 15 minutes away from where I live. Right. And 3 or 4 weeks later, she's in my concealed carry class telling me this. Well, her husband had to tell me this story because it was too traumatic for her. But she wanted to go through the class. She wanted to start carrying her gun because she was in a situation where she was victimized. And for the first time in our life, realized, crap, I wish I had that tool with me. And I wish I had the training and the ability to use it. So I'm glad they've caught these three guys. These three guys I hope are put away for a long time because as a result of the actions of these three men, an innocent homeowner is dead.
Yeah, and I think this obviously is kind of put in under the what not to do headline, but I kind of tied it to the other story because one aspect is exactly what you were saying, Riley, is like the situational awareness of recognizing, hey, something's not right. Like somebody may be in my home, and maybe you see a door open that shouldn't be, or a lock busted. But we also have we've covered many stories, and you guys that listen regularly know of people that know that there's somebody burglarizing their home or believe that there's somebody burglarizing their home and go inside anyways to confront them, or they're in their home and they chase somebody out, just like the previous story. And so it's that these are the tragic consequences of getting involved in the unknown, right? Or getting involved in any sort of gunfight or any confrontation. So and in the story, it doesn't say that he specifically knew and he went in to confront them, or it doesn't.
Right.
We're covering both sides of it, right? Like he was kind of an ambush type thing where he walks in and oh my gosh, these guys are in here, or hey, somebody's in my home. I'm going to go. I have my firearm and I'm going to go check it out. Both sides, there's lessons to be learned, right? Whether it's situational awareness or having that discernment or that restraint to say, my life isn't worth going in unless you have a family member in there, right? And you're concerned about them. But if there's no family member, there's no threat of life inside, think about it, because the guy before chased the guy down, ended up okay, right? Like he didn't end up getting hurt. Well, he got hurt, but he didn't get killed. This guy, if it was the fact that he went in there and he didn't have to, he ends up losing his life. So just kind of a lesson learned on both sides.
It really is. And that's what this is all about. Now, these kind of stories, they are intended to be lessons learned, and I hope we can take something from them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to probably take the lead on this next story too, because I should have let you take the lead on the last one, but this one I kind of sprung upon you last minute because I just read this this morning. This one from not too far from my hometown in Idaho. This happened in Bingham County, Idaho. And you had an 18-year-old suspect, a female suspect. She's pleaded guilty. So the incident actually happened a while ago, but what we have here is kind of like the final result of what transpired and the charges, and also a conviction in this case, at least in this individual's instance. You had an 18-year-old female suspect. She went through a breakup with a boyfriend. She gets it in her head that that's a bad way of putting it. She gets it in her head. She's going to put a bullet in her head in front of her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend now. She literally decided that her intent, it says she was going to go to her boyfriend's house in front of him, pull out a gun and kill herself. She says that when she got there, it turned into, a decision that she was going to shoot him and then kill herself. So a murder-suicide, as is unfortunately way too common in domestic situations. So she gets there. He's apparently like sleeping on the couch or something. And I just know that he was, it says here she was dressed in a hood and a mask when she entered the house. Her plans changed to the intent to shoot her ex-boyfriend and then herself. As she pointed the gun at her ex-boyfriend while he was laying on his couch, the gun, I guess it didn't say he was asleep, but the gun failed to fire, and he then hit the weapon out of her hand and she ran out of the house. He then, so the ex-boyfriend now, he picks up the gun, follows her out from his house and to the road, and then fires several times at her vehicle as she drove away. She was struck once in the leg and received collateral wounds to the face from a shattered window. So she pleaded guilty to aggravated assault with the use of a deadly weapon. But the boyfriend's also being charged and has pleaded guilty to firing a firearm at an occupied vehicle. I've never heard of such a charge, but and will be sentenced in the upcoming months. That's a funny one to have on, like, literally on the books. Firing a firearm at an occupied vehicle. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that just constitute
like an attempted murder?
Yeah, you know,
yeah,
that's just kind of a weird way of phrasing that. But you know, so the lesson to be learned here. I mean, this is a situation where an individual, I think, probably just more or less reacted to the situation. Wow, my ex-girlfriend just tried to kill me. I knocked the gun out of her hand. I grabbed gun. I chase. Well, by golly, she tried to kill me, so I must now fire shots at her.
Yeah.
You know, this is not a self-defense minded individual. And that's not a self-defense mindset, right?
No, not at all. And you know, I think what you nailed on the early, when we first started, was we're talking a lot about avoidance, right? Like, and discernment and understanding your own mindset. And we cover this a lot. I mean, I think we did a couple episodes just on, you know, what is your mindset? And it can easily be, you know, we can easily focus on the tactical part or the technical part of shooting a gun and not realize that if we're not training our mind in the context of mindset, like, what are we thinking? Why do I use this gun? Why do I have it? And what purpose does it serve? We can easily be start making decisions based off of our emotions, and you never want to make emotional decisions, right? Like, they're always wrong most of the time, right? So not always, but very often emotional decisions aren't the best decisions, right? And so you gotta have restraint. You gotta have that restraint, because I mean, what if he would have killed this girl, or she would have? I mean, it's a bad situation. Now both of these people are going to end up in jail. Their families, I don't know if there's kids involved or whatnot, but you know, this isn't how you want to live, right? So
Yep.
You got to be thinking.
So true. Matthew, tell us about now this is the last story before we actually get to the justified stories of today's episode. So everything up to this point had been, you know, like lessons learned for sure. Like, don't do this, don't do that. Maybe think about these things. We've got one more here from AZ, so like Arizona, azfamily.com. Man shot, killed while trying to detain hit and run suspects in Tempe, Arizona.
Yeah, and this is tragic. So 22-year-old guy, Joseph DeLeg, I think that's how you pronounce it. He witnesses a hit and run, or he witnesses a vehicle collision. Vehicle takes off. So he goes over to the vehicle, the person who's occupying the vehicle that's still on scene, make sure, hey, are you okay? They say, yeah, I'm okay. And so now he pursues the vehicle, presumably trying to, you know, I don't know if he's pursuing it at a safe distance or he's trying to just get a plate. It doesn't really go into it. We don't really know, but he pursues after this vehicle. The vehicle he's pursuing then stops, and they bail out. People in that fleeing vehicle bail out, and there's three of them. So Deleg, the victim, ends up stopping these guys, pulls out his firearm, tells them, you know, sit on the curb, I'm calling police, gets on the phone with police. He has two of them detained. They're all cooperative. They're sitting there. He's getting his phone to call police, has them at gunpoint. As he's doing that, the third person that bailed out of this car comes back, distracts Deleg just for a moment as he turns one of the guys that are sitting on the curb, pull out a revolver for his pocket, shoots Deleg in the face. He dies on scene. Terrible story. Officers get on scene. They take everybody into custody, all the outstanding suspects. It's a 17-year-old ends up being the one who shot and killed Deleg. So we kind of started with a story about a 7-year-old, and 10 years later you have people out there committing murder. And he's been charged with second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, a minor in possession of a weapon, possession of marijuana, possession of narcotic drug, hit and run, driving on a suspended license. Right. So this dude's life is over. The guy, Good Samaritan, who's trying to help out, he ends up losing his life. It's just it's a sad story. And this isn't necessarily like I wouldn't say necessarily what not to do. He's doing a noble thing by trying to help, get this hit and run suspect vehicle. But think about, how in depth are you going to get? And if you do, if the dog catches the car, right, so to speak, the dog runs after the car, barking, the car stops. What is the dog going to do? Is it going to attack the car? Or is it going to run back home? Right. And so you got to be careful about pursuing people, because if they end up stopping like you want them to do, then what's going to happen? And so he unfortunately ends up losing a life. It's a really sad story.
Yeah, for sure, man. After all the stories, we've covered on the podcast these past 4+ years, it's really taught me that if you are involved in a vehicle accident, or you witness or you come up upon a vehicle accident, that you don't just assume that it is what you think it is. What you see is just the surface, right? There could be something else going on beneath the surface. Thinking about, oh man, one example would be the situation where the concealed carrier had to save the cop, right?
Yeah.
Cop had come up, this individual had wrecked or something, and then got attacked by the person that wrecked the vehicle, and then the concealed carrier had to shoot them because they were posing a deadly threat to this cop, as they were they kind of had gained the upper hand. So it's stuff like that you come up on a scene of what appears to be an accident, but you got to approach it cautiously, which really is honestly kind of like that first rule of being a so-called first responder, that you approach the scene with caution. You make sure that the scene is safe, right? In this case, though, it developed probably relatively quickly, because man sees an accident and then sees people run off. Okay, hit and run. Well, got to catch somebody. Got to catch these guys. They got to pay for this. It's a noble thing. But in recent history, even, remember the guy just a few weeks, last month, I think, in fact, that tried to help the cops and chased after I think it was like a burglar or something.
Mm-hmm.
And the burglar turned around and shot him, killed him.
Yeah.
Right. He was, father of like 2 kids, and, had a wife and stuff. So it's a noble thing, but think before you get yourself involved.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what you have the potential of losing.
For sure.
We head now to Alaska, alaskapublic.com. This is a small town, I'm sure. In fact, I should look this up. This actually has me really curious. There's a small village in Alaska called Kwethluk, I guess. And apparently the cops in Kwethluk don't carry guns. It says here in the article because of budgetary reasons. All right, so I just looked it up. I should have looked this up before we began, but okay, I got this map pulled up now. They are in the far southwestern corner of Alaska, in the Yukon Delta National Wildlife Refuge. This is in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so this is completely understandable. You have this small village that has a police force, and which actually that's kind of impressive. So maybe the population of this village is more than what I think, but because it says out of the 10 village police officers in Kwethluk, 0 carry a gun. Some have a baton and pepper spray, but others are armed with only handcuffs. Officers explained that the reason that the village police officers don't carry firearms is a lack of funding. that the required training to carry firearms takes 2 to 3 months in the lower 48, and that the city does not have the funds necessary to afford the kind of training so that they could avoid being sued for improper use of force. Okay, so that's kind of setting the tone. Now, this again, a small village in the middle of nowhere in Alaska, and cops don't carry guns. So this is like England, like where the beat cops. Okay, so the population is 721 people. It says here they have 10 cops for 721 people.
It's a lot of cops.
So they don't have a budget to train 10 cops to carry guns. Maybe they could have a budget to have a police force of
4,
2 or 3 cops, like most 700 population, villages have, and pay for those guys to get training. But anyway, I don't mean to make fun of them. I'm not making fun of them. It's just kind of, this is the reality of some of these very remote locations, which Alaska has a lot of them. So what happens here, I've really buried the lead here to the story, is an armed resident, a 19-year-old man, breaks into the village public safety building, says that he's dressed for combat. He staged rifles inside and then activated the fire alert system. So it goes into the village public safety building. This is basically a building. There's a photo of it too, that I'm guessing is probably used for all firefighting and police related duties. He breaks in, sets himself up, pulls the fire alarm. So what happens? You get all these first responders start rushing to this public safety building. As they show up, this 19-year-old man starts firing bullets at them. Fortunately, nobody was hit or wounded. And by the way, the perpetrator was wearing a bulletproof vest and helmet. So, I mean, this is well planned. Like, this is a very much set up ambush style attack on first responders, because you're going to get cops that show up, you're going to get volunteer firefighters that show up, you're going to get all kinds of, it's almost like this guy didn't care who he was going to kill. He was setting this up to be an all out ambush and murdering of first responders. What put an end to it? Well, according to this story, a resident by the name of Casey Thompson, will recognize him. He showed up with a rifle and was able to get the shooter to drop his weapon. So just one of the local residents grabs his gun and goes over there and puts a stop to it. How about that? You have regular Joe dude, living in town there, and he's the one that's rescuing the cops from being killed. Pretty remarkable. So now it has this small village's police department thinking about pursuing more training, or at least getting their officers armed to be carrying guns, because this was just unacceptable for them to be put into such a position. That there was literally nothing that these cops could do to stop this 19-year-old guy from shooting at him. So it took an armed member of the community to put a stop to it. Remarkable story, by the way. Kind of silly in a way, that just the concept that cops wouldn't be armed, like this, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and when I came across this, I was almost reading it like, wow, this is crazy. I can't believe nobody's covered this. This is just a bizarre, like, the police department's kind of, they don't have guns, and it's, and a citizen stops a potential, ambush killing of potentially 10 police officers or first responders, right?
Yes.
So in nothing, like not even like crickets, right? So it's crazy. And what's interesting is, Casey Thompson, the guy who stops the shooter, and by the way, he doesn't kill the shooter. He like basically talks him down, right? And at gunpoint, which is awesome. This Casey Thompson doesn't even want to talk to the media. He's like, "Nah, I'm good." Like, all in the day's work, right? Like, other than, it's crazy, but this is reality, and I just think, I think it's interesting that these types of things don't get covered, like we always say, they don't cover the good stories and stuff, but this was like buried. And I thought, wow, we got to talk about this, because this is, even though it's a remote area, probably not a lot of crime, it doesn't matter if they didn't have a murder in 10 years, you're about to have 10 in 30 seconds. So
No.
it's you know what I mean? So it's that would have put this place on the map, for sure.
Yep. For sure. Uh, Again, yeah, quite literally, because people have never heard of Kwethluk, I am sure, Alaska.
Right.
So remarkable story and remarkable result. Good for them. You know what this department should do, or what I see there's other villages or little towns that are kind of in that region. They should pay to send one of their guys or two of their guys off to get some,
Certificate.
law enforcement, at the very least, pistol instructor certifications, and come back and then train their own guys. And that's actually what a lot of agencies do. I mean, when I went through and got I can't remember if it was my carbine or handgun instructor cert as a, for on the LE side, we had a guy from a small town sheriff's department that was there so that he could go back and train their officers, their deputies, because they don't have a lot of resources. Sounds like a reasonable idea. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope they get that all worked out and that they are not found vulnerable like that again.
Yeah, and maybe get a GoFundMe. If we can give GoFundMes for accounts set up for bail people out of jail and stuff like that, why not
Yeah,
get a GoFundMe for this police department?
for sure. You want to set that up?
Yeah, I'll make the first donation.
All right. Tell us, give us kind of the rundown on this situation in Seattle just a few days ago, where the Seattle security guard helps disarm a rioter who had an AR-15 stolen from a smashed police cruiser.
Yeah, this is a crazy story, and you guys might have seen the video. But basically, what happens is obviously during the riots are going on, and some AR-15s are stolen out of police vehicles. All right, so in this video, you see a guy run up. You see a couple people around the front of this vehicle trying to kind of monkeying with this AR-15. It doesn't really look like they know what they're doing with it, but they're possibly trying to figure out how to shoot this thing.
My understanding is that the boy, I say boy, he looked like he was like 16 years old, to be honest with you. I think he fired a few rounds into the vehicle.
You know what? He did. Yeah, I just
So
saw.
so that's a relevant fact, right? Because
Yeah,
that
for
paints
sure.
a picture of that this is not just a kid that's messing around with a gun, but this has a potential for turning into a very deadly situation.
Right. Yeah, in the video it doesn't show him shooting it, but if you read the article, it does say that prior to the video starting to roll, he was shooting rounds into the vehicle. And so this security guard, he's a former Special Forces member, and he's a security guard for a Fox News camera crew that's going out and recording this stuff. He basically runs up to this dude. He's got an AR-15 himself, and he's got a handgun. He draws a handgun, runs up straight up to this guy that has this AR-15, points a gun. I mean, has it basically right in this dude's face, grabs the AR-15 out of this guy's hand, pulls it out, drops the magazine, looks like he clears it out. And I mean, it's crazy because he acts swiftly, aggressively, confidently. Like, we're talking about, choosing what you're going to get involved in, right?
Yep.
This guy decided, hey, I'm going to. Could he have shot him with his AR-15 from a distance, knowing that this guy has an AR-15 and he's already just cranking off rounds? Sure. I mean, I think that'd probably be reasonable. I don't know. Like, there's other factors, sure. But he decides, hey, I'm not going to put other people at risk because there's a ton of people running around, and puts his life on the line. Runs up and basically ambushes this guy. But the thing is he had the position of advantage, right? He took this guy before he was aware of what was going on, and which was great. Now, I think if this guy would have been alert and shooting at people and looking where he was going, maybe the response would have been different, right? He would have had to engage him maybe from a distance, but because his training, he knew that this guy's situational awareness was not there. He goes up and takes the upper hand and grabs that firearm or that rifle. It was awesome to see that.
Yeah. This is actually where Fox's reporting is off. But this guy was not former special forces. I know that because I was able to track this guy down. Kind of a friend of a friend of a friend, kind of, knew a little bit more about the situation. I'm a little hesitant to give too much personal details necessarily, although I know his identity has been leaked. It's out there. But I actually found a Instagram video of him online where he kind of talks about this a little bit, some more from his perspective. And he also posted another post. He said, "By the way, I am not SF." He's like, "I was just a grunt." So he was a Marine, and he was an 0311.
Right on.
So just standard, rifleman infantry. Right. So he was very clear to make he wanted to set the record straight on that. But this guy knew what he was doing. For the most part. Not everybody goes into the Marine Corps, and Matthew knows this, and then comes out just as a grunt, knows anything about particularly civilian-based handgun self-defense. But I noticed first of all, you're absolutely right. He basically counter ambush this guy. Like, he comes from the side. This kid doesn't see him coming. Until he's right up in his face. And I'll bet that was probably the shock of that kid's life, like seeing that Glock right in his face, like, oh man,
I didn't sign up for this.
I'm done. Because you see that in his, the guy takes the rifle and the kid's just like, and he just takes off. Like, oh man, like I almost just died, But I noticed as the man approached, he had the gun out, but as he approaches, he pulls it back into a position of retention so he can get up close. He reaches in, he grabs the rifle, he pulls it back. He then maintains control of the situation. There was actually an individual that was on the ground behind the vehicle that he checked on. He actually explained this in one of his online posts. He just checked to make sure that that person on the ground was okay. And then he went back to dealing with the man that had the rifle and clearing the rifle and taking care of it that way, and then eventually returning the rifle to the police. So pretty wild, and a great response, and man, on point. So well done. And here's the thing: police had been called, right? The news crew this man was protecting. By the way, I think that's kind of awesome in a way. Weirdly, it's a kind of weird thing. Like, you have a news crew down there reporting on this stuff, covering these riots. I'm not sure that's the smartest thing in the world to do, but okay, that's what they're doing. And they hired this guy as their protector. That's interesting. I've never seen a news crew like that in the U.S. anyway, with like their own security force. So the news crew had called 911, but I mean, this is a riot. Like, cops are not coming anytime soon to that specific, like, until they can strategically move, their line, because they're going to be in a line. Wherever the police are, they're in a line. That's how riot control works, right? They don't go individually into a space because there's suddenly an emergency. No, you're on your own. And that's the thing that, kind of tying back to the beginning of the episode, that talking about the riot stuff, a true all-out riot, you are on your own, and you've got to be prepared for that. So there you go.
Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, who knows how many lives this guy saved, right? But nobody needs an AR-15 till you need one, right?
Yep.
Pretty interesting.
There you go. So that wraps up the stories today. That's the last of the Justified Save stories. I guess we really only had 2 Justified Save stories. Everything else was something else. But all good lessons had all around. And there you have it. A reminder of today's episode sponsors, ccwsafe.com. And then you can check out the new Slide Spider from Arachna Grip in the Concealed Carry web store, concealedcarry.com/slide spider. Matthew, it's been great doing another episode with you.
Yes, sir. Always awesome.
Yep. So it is time to let you go. And folks, thanks for being with us for another episode. We will see you back here, I believe, Thursday. And until then, take care, be safe, and train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care. Oh, do we have a giveaway?
Winner. Yeah, winner. I just picked him.
Oopsie. You should have put the brakes on.
Yeah.
Although we will announce it now while we're still live.
Yes.
Because one of you watching might be the lucky winner.
So I just picked the winner.
Here we go. Drum roll.
This is the winner for the Door Ambush DVD. David, last name starts with an S. David S.
So it's not David Adams.
No, David S.
Who's normally watching, although I don't think I've seen David today.
Could be David Sadams.
David Sadams. There you go.
But no. Congratulations, David.
Well, the winner will be contacted via email. Matthew will do that and get the prize out to them. So congrats, David S.
Yes, sir.
And make sure you sign up for the weekly giveaway, concealedcarry.com/podcast prize. So what's next week's?
Next week's giveaway is the Legal Boundaries by State book.
Okay, excellent. So we'll get a copy of the latest version of the Legal Boundaries by State.
Yes, sir.
That's a great book. All right, cool. We're going to sign on out of here. We'll see you guys later. Take care.